In 2023, AI entered the chat.
100 million users on ChatGPT in 2 months.
The economic outlook remained uncertain.
Powell and company have hiked rates 11 times since March of just last year. And
16 and now counting U.S. presidential campaigns unfolded.
Former President Trump still has this in command.
Donald Trump now nearing
2023 has so far left our nation in a continued state of, well, limbo. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, a columnist and the founder of DealBook, a daily business and policy report from the New York Times. What I try to do is help the public connect the dots between all of these disparate headlines and the people behind them, so we can all understand what's happening and the motivations of the players themselves. Over the course of this podcast series, you're going to be hearing conversations with individuals at the heart of each of today's major stories. Vice President Kamala Harris, Elon Musk, Bob Iger, and so many more, all from the 2023 DealBook Summit, an annual live event hosted in New York City. But before we get to those, I want to start by asking this. How did we get here? What can we take away from our discussion highlights about the pivotal events of last year as we head into this year's DealBook Summit with the people who lead and shape the world? Okay, here we go. By the time I sat down with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in 2022, FTX had collapsed. The fall of the cryptocurrency exchange, once valued at $32 billion, shattered investor confidence in crypto markets. We spoke about Yellen's skepticism about the industry and what can be done to protect American consumers. Let's talk crypto for a second, because you and I have talked crypto for a long time, and I don't know if I'm projecting onto you, but I thought you were very skeptical of crypto.
I have been skeptical.
As I have been. And then there was a period of time where I thought, as this train seemed like it was leaving the station, I think a lot of us who were so skeptical thought, are we making a mistake? Is there something real to this? What's happening here? And I was sensing from you a little bit of, maybe we actually have to figure out what this thing is, because maybe the whole thing actually is real. I don't know. Well, where are you now in light of SBF?
So I have been skeptical, and I remain quite skeptical. But I will say, look, we have to be open to financial innovation. Financial innovations can bring benefits. To the extent that the crypto world could deliver cheaper, safer transactions, we should be open to financial innovation. That said, that's not what most of it has been about. And I think everything we've lived through over the last couple of weeks, but earlier as well, says this is an industry that really needs to have adequate regulation, and it doesn't.
How about worried about the lobbying that's gone on with crypto? And by the way, Sam Bankman-Fried was a major Democratic donor, as you know. You didn't ever meet with him, did you?
I've never met with him. I think I won't begin right now either. So.
I asked the question, though, because I think there's a lot of people in the public who say, what's going on here? And whether there's too much money sloshing around, too much influence peddling.
Well, there is influence peddling in a lot of different areas. And so that, money certainly does influence politics and the ability to regulate. And crypto is certainly a good example of that. Look, we have consistently urged that regulatory gaps be closed, and I think this experience with his firm or set of firms just couldn't provide a better illustration. These are very risky assets. The good piece of an explosion like we saw is that it hasn't spilled over to the banking sector. Banking regulators have been very careful about crypto.
There's no Leman Moment here for you.
It's a Leman Moment within crypto, and crypto is big enough that you've had substantial harm of investors, and particularly people who aren't very well informed about the risks that they're undertaking. And that's a very bad thing.
In a second, you're going to hear me speaking to the man behind that Leman Moment, Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX's founder and CEO. His lawyers had advised him not to speak to the press, but in his first live interview, he spoke at the DealBook Summit. What we spoke about in this interview is exactly what was at the heart of those charges. Did SBF lie? Did he knowingly commit fraud? What follows is the way he framed his actions in the immediate collapse of his company. As you know, a lot of people have been hurt, genuinely hurt. And my hope is that over the time we have together, that we can have a candid conversation about what happened, how it happened. There are people who are angry, and they are seeking answers. I just want everybody in the audience to know that I received thousands of letters and emails, even in the past couple of days, from a lot of these people who feel like they're victims. One of the letters I got, I want to read to you, Sam, because it's from a gentleman who said that he lost his life savings. And the subject line is, Sam Bankman-Fried stole $2 million from me. It says, Andrew, can you please ask SBF why he decided to steal my life savings and the $10 billion more from customers to give to his hedge fund, Alameda? Can you ask him why his hedge fund was leveraging long all of these S-coins? I'm going to keep it polite for the kids. Please ask him if he thinks what happened was fraud. These are the kinds of letters that I've been getting repeatedly over the past several days. What do you tell this man?
Yeah. I mean, I'm deeply sorry about what happened. And as I try and reconstruct this, over the last month, I have limited access to data, but my view of it, from what I have been able to see, is roughly that, basically, look, a year ago, Alameda had, I think, something like 10% leverage, had something like 10 times the assets of the position that it had on. Over the course of the last year, there were a number of market crashes that drove the value of those assets down and the leverage up. I think it was, to my knowledge, still under 2x leverage, as of a month ago. You look at what happened this month, and in a few days, all out, PR assault, which led to a total market collapse in a pretty short period of time, no bid side liquidity. I think more than $10 billion wiped off in the matter of days. And realistically speaking, no ability for FTX to be able to liquidate that position and generate everything that was owed from it.
But I think the bigger question is where Alameda got the loan from,
Yep.
which is to say that there is a view that this is about commingling of funds.
Right.
And in that letter that I just read you, this gentleman actually copy and pasted the terms of service for FTX into the email. And I just want to read you this. It says, none of the digital assets in your account are the property of or shall or may be loaned to FTX Trading. FTX Trading does not represent or treat digital assets in users' accounts as belonging to FTX Trading. So how is it possible that Alameda had this loan of such a large size?
So there's that piece from the terms of service, but there were a number of other parts of the terms of service and a number of other parts of the platform on top of that. There is the borrow lending facility, where users were lending billions of dollars of assets to each other, collateralized by assets on the exchange. You had obviously futures contracts where there are leveraged positions on. Now, of course, all of this, it's meant to be the case that these are positions where FTX could, if it needed to, margin call those positions and close them down in time such that it would cover all of those, all those shorts, all those liabilities. Obviously, that wasn't the case here, and that's a massive failure of oversight, of risk management, and of diffusion of responsibility from myself running FTX.
But just make this very straight. Was there commingling of funds? That's what it appears like. It appears like there's been a genuine commingling of the funds that are of FTX customers that were not supposed to be commingled with your separate firm.
I didn't knowingly commingle funds. And again, one piece of this, you have the margin trading. You have, customers borrowing from each other. Alameda is one of those. I was frankly surprised by how big Alameda's position was, which points to another failure of oversight on my part, and failure to appoint someone to be chiefly in charge of that. But I wasn't trying to commingle funds.
I think the question is whether you were supposed to have access to these accounts to begin with. If I worked at a bank and was a bank teller,
Yep.
and I decided to leave the bank at the end of the evening and take the cash that I ostensibly had access to, even if I intended to bring it back to the bank later, even with
Yep.
more money to give them back, I still stole the money.
I mean, I haven't been running Alameda. I haven't been, thinking about its finances. I haven't been, making those decisions. But as CEO of FTX, it was still my duty to make sure that someone was doing diligence. I was a large owner of it. That is true, and had a lot of exposure on that side.
Crypto ultimately is actually about trust. It's about not having to trust others, frankly. It's supposed to be a trustless system. That's why you trust trust it so much, supposedly.
Yeah.
But it seems like when you read the stories, it sounds like a bunch of kids who were on Adderall having a sleepover party.
I mean, look, I screwed up. Like, I was CEO. I was the CEO of FTX. And I mean, I'd say this again and again, that means I had a responsibility. That means that I was responsible ultimately for us doing the right things. And I mean, we didn't. Like, we messed up big.
A few weeks later,
Tuesday night, federal prosecutors unsealing the indictment against the former CEO of cryptocurrency exchange giant FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried. Tonight, he's now jailed in the Bahamas.
Federal prosecutors and the SEC filed charges against Sam Bankman-Fried. In early November, he was convicted by a federal jury on all counts. Before the actors' strike froze Hollywood, I had a chance to talk to Ben Affleck about his new endeavor as the CEO of Artists Equity. It's a new production venture that he was building with Matt Damon, which they vowed would expand profit participation. And then we touched on what it's like to be a celebrity and how Affleck feels about his continued life in the public eye. Tell us what it's like to live in this spotlight. I actually wonder whether, given the fragmentation of media today, I mean, you are, as I said, a bona fide movie star. You were on the cover of Us magazine every other week.
Okay, it wasn't what I aspired to, but okay.
But
no, I know what you mean. I hear this a lot of times. I don't make it like they used to. Where are the stars? The actors haven't gotten more interesting. They've gotten better. They're extraordinary, gifted people working in entertainment today. What's happened is that the media space has become much, much more diffuse. Because of the democratization of access to entertainers, like my kids don't know who movie stars are. Mostly it's YouTubers. Everybody's got a sort of personalized, curated celebrity, which means that some people view it as having cheapened celebrity. I'm not sure that celebrity itself was ever valuable in that sort of virtuous sense. But what it has done is made it harder, so that it's made being celebrity more meaningful. So as I go into business, doing this artist equity company is the second half of my life, and my kind of mission here, one of the things I wanted to pursue was information and using technology to help sort of get some of the data that the streamers and the studios keep pretty opaque and shield, because they don't want to share. It obviously puts them in an advantaged position.
Well, let me just ask you about celebrity and the value of the celebrity. So you have it, but I think you've also lived in a complicated place in your mind and brain over all these years because of it.
I'm not built to be famous. I don't like it. You can keep it. I really have not gotten any benefit from it other than, I've gotten out of some speeding tickets and some restaurant reservations, and I don't wait in line at Disneyland, which may, in fact, be worth it if you've ever waited 5 hours to take a 3-minute ride. But other than that, fame has segued into this sort of, desire to see behind the curtain, and we want to see behind the curtain, behind the curtain, behind the curtain. And the truth is, behind the curtain is more boring, and behind the curtain is more boring. It takes a lot of work and energy and dedication of a lot of people to create this illusion for 2 hours of something really interesting and captivating. The real people are not that interesting. They're just really not. They're just real people. And so celebrity itself, the attention in and of itself is not valuable to me personally at all. I'm shy. I don't want to tell people things. So what I'd like to be able to do is my job and not have to do that celebrity part.
In American politics, as the election cycle gains steam, former President Donald Trump remains the front-runner Republican candidate, while also facing more than 40 criminal charges. Former Vice President Mike Pence dropped out of the race for president in November of this year, but back in 2022, he joined us to discuss former President Trump's character, the charges he faces, and the company he keeps.
Recently on PBS, Bill Barr said, "I personally think that they probably have the basis for legitimately indicting Trump." If they did, what do you think would happen? And do you, as somebody who's talked about the rule of law repeatedly, but also more recently talked about the politics of this, I think, how do you balance those two things?
Well, no one is above the law. But I hope, after years of politicization at the Justice Department, that the new independent counsel would think very carefully about next steps. I mean, our politics is probably more divided now than any time in our country. I'm not sure that taking bad advice from lawyers is a violation of criminal law. But the other piece of it is, I think it would send the wrong message to the world. We see too many cases in third world countries where the incoming administration prosecutes the prior administration, and that's not an image that I'd like resonating around the world from the United States of America.
Can you help explain this for us about President Trump's recent meeting with Kanye West? And I know you condemned that meeting, but since you spent as much time with the president as you have, can you explain how he seems to associate and elevate white nationalists and those who have been anti-Semitic?
Well, I can't explain it. I wasn't there. But President Trump was wrong to give a white nationalist, a Holocaust denier, a seat at the table. No president, no former president, no one aspiring to be president should give any quarter to people that hold those views.
Now we'll pivot to one of the world's major conflicts. In November of last year, with the help of a translator, I spoke to Ukraine's President Zelenskyy. Back then, it was more than 9 months into the first major land war in Europe since World War II.
We're going to be speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel a bit later, and I understand that a delegation from Ukraine has been lobbying Israel for help. Thus far, they have rebuffed Kiev's request for defense weapons, missile defense systems, which has been, I think, what you've been asking for. And the refusal, I think, is related to Jerusalem's attempt to maintain ties with Moscow due to Russia's control of Syrian airspace. What do you tell Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and what's the state of those conversations? Have you had them?
Thank you for asking. I had one conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu since the moment he became the Prime Minister of Israel returned to this office. What can I say? Of course, we are waiting for support from Israel for our country. We wouldn't want Netanyahu and Legi, those who were before him. We don't want them to continue balancing between Ukraine and Russia in this war. It's not just a misunderstanding. It's a bloody war, especially after hundreds, 550 at this time, of Iranian drones against our country and to hit our critical infrastructure. He knows this very well. He knows every detail, and he certainly can help us with air defense systems. There is nothing special here. This is not an attacking weapon against the Russian Federation. So let's not look for a compromise. It's about defending the people. If he just wants to maintain his personal relations with President Putin, then of course he may continue to do what he's been doing. But if he wants to maintain historical relationship between Israel and the Ukrainian people, then I think you have to do everything you can in order to save as many people as possible. That's my personal opinion.
President, I also wanted to ask you about SpaceX and specifically actually Starlink, because that company's CEO, who you know and I think you follow on Twitter, Elon Musk, took to Twitter and he said, Ukraine-Russia peace, redo elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Russia leaves it that way to the will of the people. Crimea, formerly part of Russia, as it's been since 1783, he says. Water supply to Crimea assured. Ukraine remains neutral. This, he says, is highly likely to be the outcome in the end. Just a question of how many die before then. This is somebody who has helped you in certain ways, but I believe you're on the other side of what he said. What do you think?
From the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russia, indeed, we had that communication, and personally, I had a line with Elon Musk. What we have lost in this society that got occupied, owing to the internet and the communication, life was maintained. Monies were paid, salaries, pensions, money orders, everything. This is very important because at some point, Putin, and it seems that Elon began to change his opinion, and we began to hear all kinds of appeals. I don't know if somebody is making an influence on him or he is making those choices himself. I always say very openly, if you want to understand what Russia has done here, come to Ukraine and you will see this with your own eyes, without any extra words. And after that, you will tell us how to end this war, who started it, and when we can end it.
Almost a year ago, before the Israel-Hamas war began, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu joined the 2022 summit via satellite, where we covered a number of topics, ranging from Israel's relationship with Iran, Saudi Arabia, and China, to the nation's legacy and the possibility of a two-state solution.
Let me ask you a question, and it's about Israel, and it's about your legacy, and it's about whether you think there is a two-state solution ultimately, whether there's a one-state solution, what you think about the humanitarian and human rights issues that continue to be challenged by this ongoing situation which has just remained unresolved for so long. If we had this conversation a decade from now, what would you want to have happened?
Well, I would like to have a resolution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but so did my predecessors. None of them got to peace. Why didn't they get to peace with the Palestinians? Because the Palestinians don't want peace.
And does that mean that you don't think that there can ever be peace?
No, I think they can. I think they've suffered from a terrible degradation of leadership. They've been commandeered by leaders who cling and promote this fantasy that Israel will disappear, that they don't have to compromise.
But so what do you have to do on your side to get there? You have this country that has great riches, great growth. You've got security. You've got all of these things.
There's a more important route here. If the Palestinians want to sit down and talk peace to me tomorrow, I'll do it. But I think realistically, their politics are so messed up that it's not really going to work. I adopted a different course. People said, unless you solve the Palestinian problem, you're not going to get to peace with the broader Arab world. And the Palestinians, remember, are 1% to 2% of the entire Arab world. But that tail was wagging the dog because they refused to make peace with Israel. They don't want peace with Israel. They want a peace without Israel. They don't want a state next to Israel. They want a state instead of Israel. So if we wait for the Palestinians, which we did, we waited for a quarter of a century since the last peace agreement, after Egypt with Anwar Sadat and after Jordan with the late King Hussein. We got no peace. Quarter of a century passed. If we're going to wait for the Palestinians, we'll wait another quarter of a century, maybe another half century. I decided to go directly to the Arab world, and having increased Israel's power in technology, in economy, in enterprise, and having, frankly, increased Israel's power militarily and through military intelligence, cyber, you name it. We became, to the Arab countries, not an enemy, but an indispensable ally to counter Iran's aggression and to better the lives of their people. They said you could not do peace with the Arab world without making peace with the Palestinians. Well, we did, and we're going to continue. And I will sit down with the Palestinians tomorrow during the broadening of the peace, as I hope with Saudi Arabia and others. But I'm not going to wait for them.
Israel faces two crises tonight, an unprecedented attack and a hostage situation like no other.
Hospitals in Gaza reportedly under relentless bombardment, the death toll in Gaza surpassing 11,000.
Much, of course, has changed since 2022.
Alarm outside headquarters of Silicon Valley Bank in Santa Clara, California today.
They just came out and told us that the bank is shut down.
Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and the Barbie movie. Some are crediting all three for keeping America out of a recession.
Phoenix has been hotter longer than any other big U.S. city. A record 30 straight days of highs above 110.
After 3 weeks of legislative paralysis, a new Speaker of the House of Representatives. His name? Mike Johnson of Louisiana.
The world's other major war in Ukraine, the long-awaited Ukrainian counteroffensive, is stretching into its 5th month, and many in the West remain concerned that it is lagging. As winter approaches, what hope does Ukraine have?
The goal when we created the DealBook Summit was to try to interview and get into the heads of the most consequential leaders in the world, in business, politics, and culture. We try to take a close look at this complex world where relationships are changing and it feels like everything is constantly in flux. On November 29th, we're going to be hearing from a lot of big names, and we're going to try to go deep on everything. Vice President Harris is going to join us. We're going to talk about escalating global conflicts and, of course, the upcoming election. I'll be asking Elon Musk about everything from AI to X to Tesla and space and how he thinks about his own influence in the world. Bob Iger is going to join us as he's in the middle of rethinking the future of Disney. We're going to make these interviews available the day after the summit on November 30th. This episode was produced by Evan Roberts and edited by Leslie Davis and Nell Galogli. Original music by Daniel Powell. The rest of the DealBook events team includes Julie Zahn, Caroline Brunell, Haley Duffy, Elaine Chen, Angela Austin, Haley Hess, Dana Pryskowski, Matt Kaiser, Yenwei Liu. Special thanks to Sam Dolnick, Nina Lassam, Ravi Mattu, Beth Weinstein, and Kate Carrington.